All right, welcome back to Equations and the Formulas unit. This is lesson 5, solving for a variable. So instead of solving for a variable that involves numbers, I'm going to show you what to do when you have an equation that involves just letters. We'll do an example with numbers first, just to refresh your memory, and then I will move on to just the letter ones. All right, so if we have 14 equals 7x and we're trying to solve for x, we're going to do what the opposite operation is. The 7 is being multiplied by the x. We want to do the opposite, which is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 7. Okay, and when I do that, on the right-hand side, 7 divided by 7 is 1, so I'll have 1x on the right, and then on the left, I will have 14 divided by 7, which is 2. Okay, so that's what we did in the last unit. You want to use the same idea on this question here. The letter in the bracket is the letter that we want to isolate for. So we want the t to be by itself, and it is multiplied by the v. So we'll do the same thing as we did in this example. We're going to divide by the v on both sides. Okay, now these v's will cross out. V divided by v is 1. So we will be left with t on the right-hand side, and on the left it will be d divided by v. Okay, one more. Here we're isolating for L. Okay, so it's the W that we need to eliminate. Divide both sides by W. These can cancel, and you'll be left with L equals A over W. Okay, for these examples here, let's say you've got y equals mx plus b and you want to isolate for x. All right, you want the equation to be x equals something. Okay, so let's look at an example that involves numbers first. So here, if we're trying to solve for L, we need to get rid of the 3, which is being multiplied by the L, and we need to get rid of the 13, which is being added. Remember, the rule is always eliminate what is added and subtracted first, and then worry about the division and multiplication. So I'm going to get rid of the 13 first, and I will do that by just moving it over to the left-hand side and changing the sign. Okay, so we have 28 subtract 13 equals 3L. Okay, so if you subtract 13 from 28, you have 15, and now divide both sides by 3. Okay, so L is equal to 5. So we want to follow the same format for this question here. We're going to rearrange this equation so that the x is by itself, and then we'll do it again for the b to be by itself. So for the x, get rid of the b first because that's what's being added on this side. So we want to subtract b on the left-hand side. Y minus b equals mx. And now remember, we're isolating for x. We want the x by itself, so it's the m we need to eliminate. And now divide both sides by m. Okay, so you end up with y minus b over m is equal to x. Whether you have each letter divided by m or just one big division sign with one m in the center, it's both. This doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. Now let's say we were trying to isolate for the b. Okay, so the only thing we'd have to do here is take this whole thing and move it to the left-hand side. Okay, by subtracting. And that's it. In this example, we want to solve for the given variable in the brackets, but we want to rearrange first. So we're given an equation, p equals 2l plus 2w. That's the equation for perimeter of a rectangle. And we want to know what the perimeter is, or we want to know what the width is if the perimeter is 34 and L is 9. But we want to rearrange this first. I know that you could take these values and sub them in and solve for W. That's one way of doing it, but you're being asked to rearrange this in terms of W because that's what you're practicing. All right, so get rid of what is being added, subtracted first. So this 2L, we would move to the other side and subtract it. So now we have p minus 2L equals 2W. And remember, we're isolating for W, and it's being multiplied by 2. So let's divide both sides by 2. Okay, or every single term by 2, I should say. Okay, now you can simplify. So we have P divided by 2 minus, these 2's will cancel out. So minus L equals, and these will cancel out, equals W. So this could actually be minus L equals W. Okay, and now you want to replace the perimeter with 34 and your length with 9. I could have actually crossed those out to make this a little bit simpler. This could totally be eliminated. There we go. So we have 34 divided by 2 is 17, minus 9 is going to give us 8. All right. Okay, so how do we eliminate a fraction example? All right, so fractions, if you wanted to solve for h, all right, how do you get rid of this 3 over 4 in the front? You're doing the opposite. So essentially this says 3 times h divided by 4. So if you're going to multiply by 3, the opposite would be dividing by 3, and dividing by 4 means multiplying by 4. Okay, so you're going to multiply by its reciprocal. Reciprocal of 3 over 4 would be 4 over 3. You're just flipping the fraction. So I'm going to take both sides and multiply them by 3 over 4. Okay, so you can see I wrote brackets around each of my terms. Okay, and then I multiply this by 4 over 3 and this by 4 over 3. Okay, that's the reciprocal of 3 over 4. So 4 times 11 is 44 over 3 on this side. And then on the right hand side we have 3 times 4 is 12 and 4 times 3 is 12. And these will reduce to just 1h. So h is equal to 44 over 3. Okay, so we want to follow the same idea if we just have letters involved. So here we have y equals ab over x, and we want to isolate for x. Right? So how do we eliminate this a over b? We multiply both sides by b over a, right? By its reciprocal. Okay, and then just multiply through. So b times y, and then a times 1. There is a 1 underneath this y here. And then on the right, ax times b, and then b times a. There we go. And then just simplify. A over b is the same thing as b over a, so these can cross out, and you're just left with x. And one more, this one is isolating for x. Remember, whenever you're adding and subtracting a term, you want to get rid of that first. So I'm going to move this c over to the other side. So y minus c is equal to a over b x. And then now put brackets around every term and multiply every term by the reciprocal, which would be b over a. Okay, so what I decided to do here is these are separate terms, so there's two ways of doing this. You could put a bracket around each one and multiply each one by b over a, okay, or you could use a distributive property where you put one bracket around the whole thing, which is what I did, and multiply that by b over a, but now I've got to distribute that to everything inside the bracket. Okay, it works out to be the same. So on the left hand side we have by over a minus bc over a. Right, I just multiplied each of these terms by the b over a, and then on the right hand side it's ax times b, and then b times a at the bottom. And I just wrote them in alphabetical order, a, b, x. Now these can cancel out, right? A, b is equal to b over a, so we have our x on its own, which is what we wanted. The question asked us to isolate for x, which is the one in the bracket. And that's it. Okay, the last thing I want to do is I want to just go through an application question. We have Peter, who's a hotel manager. His responsibilities include renting rooms for conferences. The hotel charges $250 per day plus $15 per person for the grand ballroom. And we want to create a formula that represents this. So we're going to use C for cost and N for a number of people. Okay, so you're writing an equation that represents this, what I have underlined here. Hotel charges $250 per day plus $15 per person. So cost is equal to 250 plus 15n. Question B, how much should Peter charge for 50 people? Okay, so let's say 50 people are coming. What should the cost be? So it's going to be $250 plus 15 times the number of people, which is 50 in this case. And so that would be $1,000. Okay, how many people would attend a wedding reception if the wedding planners have a budget of $3,250? Let's go back to question C and do that first. So let's rearrange the formula to express n in terms of C. So we want to rearrange this formula so that it starts with n. Okay, so using the same methods that we used in the questions above, you want to move this 250 to the left-hand side first, change the sign. So C minus 250 is equal to 15n. And now to isolate for this n, divide every term by 15. Okay, so I've done that here. These will simplify or cancel each other out. So we're left with n is equal to C minus 250 over 15. Okay, so we're going to use this for question D. How many people could attend the wedding reception if the wedding planners have a budget of $3,250? So now you're given the cost, all right, that's your budget of $3,250, and we want to know how many people would attend. How many people would be the n? So we're looking for the n. Okay, so replace your C with 3,250, subtract 250, which will give us 3,000, and then divide the 3,000 by 15, which is 200 people. There you go. So the homework will be lesson 5. So this is on page 6, okay, of your homework booklet if you're working on that. All right, let me know if you have any questions.